Hi, thanks for joining me. Today I want to talk a little bit about what success means, and what it means especially in the context of one of what's turning out to be my favorite handhelds of all time, the PlayStation Vita. What got me thinking about this was a video I did a little while back and a comment that I got on it, because in the video I just remember saying offhand, like, oh, and now that the Vita is a big success, and somebody, like, I think very earnestly commented in my comment section, and they were like, oh, is the Vita worth having? And I was like, well, yeah, of course it's worth having, it's great. But I realized that it's interesting the disconnect that there is between this particular system being successful and not being successful. So I wanted to address that a little bit here today. Because I like numbers and I like to have some data on hand, I've gone ahead and printed out a little bit of information about this system in particular. And I think that it's worth noting what the sales figures are. Now, I took this information from like video game price charting. I don't know how accurate this is. I wouldn't, take this as the absolute truth, but at least we have something in general to go on. The PlayStation Vita, according to this site, in the US has sold about 2.5 million units, 2.5 million systems. Worldwide, 14.73 million, so almost 15 million systems worldwide. Obviously, worldwide, it's doing a little bit better than it is in the U.S. specifically, or North America, perhaps I should say. In Europe, we're talking 4.8 million. In Japan, we're talking 5.2 million. And then other sales around the world. Now, let's compare that to a couple of things. I think a good point of reference might be the Wii U, as very soon that system is being phased out for the new Nintendo Switch, which I think is an interesting looking system. The Wii U, for instance, had over 6 million sales in the US, 6.15. Now, if you compare those two, of course, the Wii U is a much bigger success in the United States. What is this? Over twice as many systems sold for the Wii U as the PlayStation Vita. However, if you take in the worldwide sales of the Wii U, the total is actually 13.67 million units sold. Now again, how accurate this is, I don't know, but that actually makes the total number of units for the PlayStation Vita greater than the Wii U. This is kind of what I want to point out is, how subjective is success? Certainly in North America, the Wii U is a bigger success than the Vita. Worldwide, however, or if you just talk about the consoles, the PlayStation Vita is a bigger success than the Wii U. Let's look at another platform just to get a little bit more information here, another perspective. The Nintendo 3DS. Now, you can't really argue that the 3DS is, again, as in terms of a platform, in terms of hardware sales, it's actually a smashing success versus either the Wii U or the PlayStation Vita. Honestly, in any region, it sold more total than the Vita or the Wii U. So in the US, 19.95 million, in Europe, 16.73 million, in Japan, 21.55 million, another few million worldwide. It's about 61.98 million units sold. Very successful for Nintendo. Okay? So, I think when people are talking about success, it's interesting to think about success for whom. Obviously, the 3DS was a big success for Nintendo. The Wii U, on the other hand, we've noted, hasn't been a big success for Nintendo. The PlayStation Vita also was not a success for Sony. The sales numbers don't lie about that. They reflect that. There's a reason why they're coming out with a Switch to replace the Wii U. There's a reason why I'm assuming, and I think, I'm probably on good ground with this, that Sony is not going to come out with another handheld system. In what ways is the PlayStation Vita a success? Because I've called it a success previously. And I think that there's a really strong argument that can be made as to the ways in which it is a success. And especially if we talk about that to a certain extent in relation to the 3DS. it's the beginning of 2017. I got some Christmas money. And I haven't talked about this. I'm being a little different with my pickups videos now, so I don't know exactly when I'll talk about these games specifically, but I actually got 5 games with Christmas money specifically. One is a PlayStation 4 game, and 4 are PlayStation Vita games. Now, these are not Vita games that came out like a year ago or 2 years ago or when the system launched or anything like that. These came out like within the past few months. These are all new PlayStation Vita games. Now, being curious, I went ahead and did a little research. What games are coming out here in 2017? Games are a really big deal. They kind of sink or keep video game systems afloat. According to Metacritic, and this isn't the whole picture, but I just went to Metacritic. I was like, well, what are the upcoming 3DS games? They have 5 listed. Now, I wasn't able to break these out into which ones are retail and which ones are download, so I don't know if some of these are digital only and some of them aren't. But 5 games. That's all that Metacritic had listed for the 3DS. The PlayStation Vita, on the other hand, 14 games were listed for that system. Now, again, this isn't the whole story, but I think it indicates a little bit of a pattern, and I'll reinforce that with some numbers that I took from another site. The 3DS, it's got Punch Club coming out in January, theoretically. Color Cubes, Dragon Quest 8, Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World, and Story of Seasons Trio of Towns. That's it for that list. The PlayStation Vita, on the other hand, has, again, maybe some of these are digital, but I know for a fact that the bulk of these are all physical releases. I'm interested in quite a number of them. Super Magical, Fate, Extella, The Umbral Star, Atelier Shaley Plus, Alchemist of the Dusk Sea, Dynasty Warriors, Godseekers, Berserk the Band of the Hawk, Ys Origin, Akiba's Beat, God Wars Future Past, which looks really, really cool strategy RPG, Zero Escape the Nonary Games, which is a compilation of the 999, which was originally on the DS only, and Virtue's Last Rewards. That's something that's going to be really cool. I don't know if it has the newest game in the series on that. A Rose in the Twilight, Period Cube Shackles of Amadeus, Hakuoki Kyoto Winds, Operation Babel New Tokyo Legacy, and Mary Skelter Nightmares. So definitely a much larger list, but maybe it's just Metacritic. Let's take a look at something else. So we have IGN. I'm not going to list off all the games here, but they paint a much less bleak picture for the 3DS. I counted 12 games that they had listed for release on the 3DS. So, obviously this is just a discrepancy. This is just an outlying, figures that we got here from Metacritic. Well, actually not. Then I went to see how many games does IGN have listed coming out for the PlayStation Vita, and it has 19. So just to reiterate, that's 12 to 19. And this is something that I think has kind of been coming up over and over. It's one of the reasons why it just gets on my tits, as Lawn Boys Post 1975 would say. It's when people say the Vita has no games, because behind me here we have my Vita collection. It's cut off a little bit on the end there, but I have a lot of games for the Vita. I just bought 4 more games for the Vita, and the Vita has a lot of games. I'll try to put up a picture here, which I like very much, of somebody's very, very large PlayStation Vita collection. So what's going on here? And basically, for me, I think what it boils down to is, again, for whom is the PlayStation Vita a success? It's a success for me because I really enjoy owning it. The 3DS is a success for me as well because I also really enjoy owning that. But it's interesting to look at these numbers that I've pulled up. We can see even by the more conservative numbers here from IGN that the PlayStation Vita has 40% more games scheduled to be released in 2017 than the 3DS does. And it's one of those things where you would say, well, the 3DS sold at least 4 times as many units globally as the PlayStation Vita did, but we don't see 4 times more games coming out for that system. In fact, I think it's pretty clear here that, by any measure here, we actually see less coming out. One of the reasons why it is a success and also a failure is in what it was intended to do. This is kind of a dead horse that I think has been beaten plenty, but I'm just going to state very briefly that I believe that the Vita was supposed to be a portable PlayStation 3. And I was excited about that aspect of it. It's a powerful system. Sony themselves and a few other third-party companies released some PlayStation 3 quality titles for the PlayStation Vita. But I think that it is clear to anyone that by that metric, the system is a failure. It didn't sell enough copies to make the amount of money that it takes to make a PlayStation 3 quality game its money back in sales on this particular platform. Now, let's take a look at some other games that people might say are some of the more successful games on the system. For instance, let's say Atlas published Persona 4 Golden. Now we know that in the U.S., for instance, the system sold, what was it, about 2.5 million units. Persona 4 Golden in the U.S., according again to video game price charting, sold 1.3 million units. Now for Atlas, I assume that that was a success. They ported a PlayStation 2 game, they made some enhancements to it, and by all measures of the the install base of the Vita, it sold very well. And what we're seeing is, I think, a lot of games are still coming out on the Vita over and over again, and a lot of them are coming out from Japanese developers. And you might remember that the Vita had a larger installed base of systems in Japan, but it still seems to be worth it for companies that localize Japanese games here to continue to release the software here. You have things like Dungeon Travelers 2, the Royal Library and the Monster Seal, that was also published here by Atlas. About 110,000 copies sold. You have things like Odin Sphere, Leaf Thruster, from Nipponichi Software, 150,000 units sold here. Operation Abyss, the New Tokyo Legacy, 100,000 sales here. So it seems that a particularly well selling game for the Vita in the US might be in the hundreds of thousands, up to maybe about 300,000 sales. And then you have maybe your average sellers are probably going to be more like 10 to 30,000. This is not a success for Sony. It is a success for gamers, especially from the perspective that I think one of the ways in which gaming veered off quite a lot, in the past decade, really, but maybe in particular 6, 7, 8 years ago, was that these video game budgets ballooned so much and got so big that you have all of these games that have to appeal to such a mass audience that you're not really able to have like these sort of more niche, more interesting, more unique experiences that some people really like. For instance, if you're really into like versus fighters, or you're really into shoot 'em ups, or you're really into RPGs, or specific genres of RPGs like dungeon crawlers or roguelikes, or action RPGs, or some of these things that maybe they just aren't going to sell over 1 million copies and make back the money that somebody is going to be pumping into this big budget game for years and years of development. You can release those games on the PlayStation Vita knowing that they're going to sell 10, 20, 30,000 or more, and you can have a success on that system. You can also have a success as a gamer, because if you really like those games, you're really going to enjoy playing them. And I think when it comes down to it, what's successful for a gamer and for the end user isn't always the same thing that's successful for the company that made a hardware platform. So I think in conclusion, it's a little bit sad that the PlayStation Vita was not a success for Sony. I certainly would have liked to have seen that. I certainly would like to see another handheld console from them, and we're probably not going to get that. But I think there's few measures by which the PlayStation Vita is not a success for gamers. I think it's very sad and unfortunate and foolish for people to reiterate the Vita has no games talking point, and additionally that the Vita is a failure talking point. I really think you have to consider, well, who is it a failure for? For you and me, absolutely not. It's a success for you. It's a success for me. It's a really great system that I really enjoy having, and I'm looking forward to it having a bright future in 2017. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you'll join me again for more video game related videos. Take care.